good day, adventurers. Today we're going to be talking about a character I created, a character by the name of Korvack. Korvack, the undead powerhouse, as he came to be known by me and my friends. He is not only a gloat on a really cool character that I created, but he's also a cautionary tale for GMs. So to start off with, he was a very unique character. He was a skeleton. He was not a race of any particular type. He was just an undead skeleton. He was an Aether sorcerer bloodline. An Aether elemental bloodline sorcerer is the better way to put it. And he also used a house rule of mine that I have not yet revealed to you guys. I'm saving it for a later video. And he was an extremely powerful character, not only because I know how to build my sorcerers, but he was extremely powerful because of one, he was allowed to be undead. Two, he was allowed to be Aether bloodline for an elemental bloodline. And three, he was allowed to use a custom rule that my GM at the time was not ready to use. He didn't look it up. He didn't research the rule that I asked him to use very well, and he didn't use it very well, and he kind of abused it on his end to no end. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about. First off, I just want to talk about how Aether bloodline, if you allow that, I stress that you be very careful allowing Aether bloodline, because allowing Aether as a bloodline, it's essentially true damage. We did it at the time because I used a program called Hero Labs to make the characters, and they were allowing it as a type. And so I asked my GM if he would allow me to make an Aether bloodline sorcerer, because Aether was new at the time. It just came out in the bestiaries as an elemental type, and my GM allowed it. And he probably shouldn't have, because he could not control it. He did not know how to balance out Aether damage being true damage that could not be resisted or blocked in any way. There was no resistances for it or anything like that, and he couldn't figure out how to deal with it. He couldn't figure out how to deal with true damage going through for large amounts, because as an Aether bloodline sorcerer, you're able to turn the elemental effect of any one of your spells from whatever element it is to whatever element your bloodline is. So I could literally make Shocking Grass being Aether Grass. I could make Fireball into Aether Ball. I can make Lightning Bolt into Aether Bolt. And essentially this true damage would just rip through enemies like water on toilet paper. It was insane. And so he should not have allowed this. This is something that my GM should have admitted after the first few times that he couldn't control it. He should have accepted that he couldn't control it, and he should have told me that he can't handle that anymore and asked me if we could change my bloodline. And we could have done that. We could have changed my bloodline to a different sorcerer type, and I could have changed it to fire, ice, or whatever, and we would have had something much more manageable, and he would have been able to create opponents to be resistant and to actually give us a challenge. But he did not. He did not accept his defeat, which is a hard thing to say, but as a GM, you should know when you're beat. You should know when things have gotten too far and you can't control it, and you should be able to admit it and talk to your players about not being able to control it. But another thing that didn't go over well is that I asked him to implement a custom house rule of mine that I had just made. I had just got done creating it for my own games, but my games wasn't running at the time, and I really wanted to see it used. I wanted to see it tested out. So I asked him if he wanted to test it out for me by letting us run it. And he allowed it. And again, this is something that he allowed, but he did not... He chose not to read it. It was very clear that he didn't read up on the house rule, and he didn't learn how to do it. I think he was relying on me to tell him everything on how it worked, which you'd think would go over fine, but it doesn't go over fine if he doesn't listen to me. And that was the problem we were coming down to, is the fact that he would not listen to what I had to say, and he was starting to change the rules. This is a very big thing that that GMs need to be very careful of, and that is changing rules. The rules are meant to be bent a little bit, flexible and stuff like that, allowing you to essentially flex to here or to there a little bit, but the rules exist for a reason, and that is to allow players to plan around stuff. If players don't have rules to plan around, then everything's completely up in the air and it's very difficult to be a player. If you can't plan around a rule existing and you can't plan that something's going to work the way that it is said to work, you don't want to play anymore. That is the simple of it. And it's really hard to play in a game where the rules behind how your weapons work or your magic works changes based on the GM's whims of whatever benefits the GM most that time. I'm all for the GM flexing and changing and bending the rules to benefit him just a little bit more because his players are doing phenomenal. But if you keep changing the rules over and over and over again, especially one rule in particular, you keep changing this one rule to work differently all the time to make sure it's always benefiting you, meaning that the players never can figure the rule out and can never plan around the rule, that is a big no-no, and I highly recommend you never do that. Try your hardest to stick to the rules as much as possible. If you bend it, if you flex it, if you change it in any way, try to remember exactly how you change it and stick to it, or go back to its original ruling and stick to that. But do not keep flip-flopping back and forth or back to a new thing, to a new thing, to a new thing, because you're just going to piss your players off and they're just going to not want to play anymore. So one of the things that he kept changing, that one of the things he did to show me that he couldn't understand one of my house rules, is that it was a house rule revolving around the ability to charge magic, to charge spells, and to hold a spell charge and do a much more powerful version. So like an example of like charging up a level 2 spell twice so that way it does 2 times as much damage is something that you could do. And with that though, there's mechanics about concentration and being able to hold the effect. And so if certain things happen that stress you out, such as getting attacked or being in an earthquake, something that really messes with you, you have to make a concentration check, otherwise you completely lose focus and the spell fizzles. Well, for some reason he thought that, and this really upset me as a player, because he thought that a bell ringing in the distance, way down the road, like several blocks away, a church bell going off, would make me lose focus, and he made me do a concentration check. And that really upset me for several reasons, because to me, I was planning around this as being very quiet, and yes, if something was going to interrupt me, it damn well be something very, fitting. But for me to be told that a bell ringing down the block, several blocks away actually, was making me lose focus on my spell, made me really upset, because I looked at him and I'm like, I'm not a damn squirrel. I don't have ADHD that bad. I can stay focused through a bell ringing. A lot of people can stay focused through a bell ringing. Half the people are still able to still keep driving just fine with a bell ringing. It's focus on your spell shouldn't be that much harder to do than a simple bell. If a bell ringing makes you lose focus on a spell, then there's no hope for using this mechanic in combat at all, because the clashing of steel would make you lose focus as well. It made no sense to me. It really upset me. And it was changes like that and fluctuations where it clearly didn't understand it. He was making up scenarios and rules to make the situation better for him and stuff like that, instead of accepting that he couldn't control the rule. He couldn't control the mechanic, and he couldn't control Aether. Instead of admitting that he couldn't control it, and I highly recommend this for you guys. If you are the GM and you have implemented one of my gauntlets or one of my own house rules that I've created here, and it has become very clear that you cannot control it, there are a couple things that you can do. One, start talking to your players. Get open with them. Allow them to help you. If you as a group then can't control it, can't figure out how to balance it out, then it's time to admit to your players that you can't control it, you can't handle it, and that you would like it to just go away. let's just make it disappear, try to make it role play, try to explain it away. But you just get rid of it. It's always better to get rid of it. And if it's just a mechanic or a ruling or something like that, just make it go away. Just act like it never existed and pretend that whatever happened didn't happen. Stuff like that. It's better to do that than to keep trying to figure out how to balance something that you just can't balance. And so that's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about Korvack, the undead powerhouse. He was amazing. He was capable of doing lightning bolts that were aether, so it was lines of aether damage that was pure damage that would just rip through people. It was so cool. It was a lot of fun to play. Now, I will say that my GM was able to handle some things that normally people can't handle, and that was the undead aspect. He allowed us to play undead characters. Now, normally I recommend you make sure you know what you're doing when you are allowing people to play monster races such as undead, because I think there was 3 of us and he allowed us to play a zombie, a skeleton, and a ghost. These 3 are not balanced in any way. A skeleton is 1d8 of hit die, a zombie is 2d8 of hit die, and a ghost I think is like 3 or 4 hit die. So that's how many levels of difference there were between our characters, and our bonuses and our abilities were that drastically different. So we were not balanced in any way, yet he was managing that part just fine. He was controlling the differences. He wasn't balancing us as much as that I'd hoped. Like, he didn't give the zombie and the skeleton anything to make up for the ghost, except for technically allowing the skeleton to be an aether blood mage, I guess. But yeah, he didn't really allow much of a balance difference there. But he was able to control the undead aspect. He was able to control the undead aspect. That was one thing that he was planning on, that he had figured out. But Aether Bloodline, he didn't see coming. He didn't know how to control. The new rule, he didn't read up on it. He didn't research it. And he didn't know how to control. And so that's just something that I just want to stress to everybody. Just make sure that if you're going to allow something, you look into it, you read up on it, you do the work, and you make sure you want to do it. If you don't want to do the work, if you don't want to look it up, then just don't allow it. Don't rely on your players to memorize all the stuff that's happening. Don't rely on your players to remember the rules for you. That's just not good GMing. Try your best to research and look up these things beforehand, so that way you know how they work, because that makes it a lot easier for you to GM. Otherwise, that is just my little video about Korvack the Undead Powerhouse and the cautionary tale that comes with GMs allowing new rules and new mechanics. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys got similar problems, similar things that happen, go ahead, let me know in the comments. Come to a stream, tell me, talk to me. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to talk about it. And otherwise, I hope you guys have a safe adventure.